Welcome back, everyone, to the Deep Dive. AI is everywhere these days, but today we're going beyond the headlines to explore a region that's often overlooked in these conversations.
Yeah, we're going to be diving deep into AI governance in Africa.
Now, I'll admit I didn't even know if AI was a big thing in Africa yet.
Oh,
Um,
it is.
but wow, after digging into this report, I was blown away by how much is already happening. And I think what's most fascinating is that the choices being made now in Africa could actually shape the future of AI globally, not just on the continent.
That's absolutely right. And what's really interesting to me is that Africa isn't just passively adopting AI, they're actively working to make sure that AI benefits everyone on the continent. It's not just about importing the latest algorithms, it's about creating homegrown solutions to their own unique challenges.
Africa has its own set of challenges and opportunities, right? You can't just take regulations from, say, Europe or the US and expect them to work the same way.
Exactly. Take digital inequality, for example.
Mhm.
The African Union Development Agency, NEPAD, they've been really vocal about this. They stress the need for AI solutions that actually address this digital divide, which is a major concern in many African countries.
So we're talking about more than just cool tech. This is about using AI to tackle some really fundamental development issues.
Right.
Okay, so we have this report from the Thomson Reuters Foundation, Part 2, Emerging Frameworks in Africa. It's part of a toolkit series on AI governance for Africa and just came out in December 2024.
It's a great resource.
So before we get into the details, can you give us the big picture? Why is AI governance such a hot topic right now, especially for Africa?
Well, there's no doubt that AI has the potential to revolutionize life in Africa.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Think about healthcare, agriculture, education, finance. The possibilities are huge.
Huge. Yeah.
But, and this is a big but, there are also risks. Like any powerful technology, AI can be misused. You have the potential for bias in algorithms, and then there's the whole issue of data privacy, which is a major concern everywhere. And all of that makes strong AI governance absolutely crucial. It's about making sure that AI benefits everyone in Africa and doesn't just end up making existing inequalities worse.
So essentially it's about making sure that AI is used responsibly and ethically.
Yeah, exactly.
So what are we actually seeing on the ground? Are there continent-wide rules that everyone in Africa follows when it comes to AI?
It's more complicated than that.
Okay.
It's more like a patchwork of different initiatives and instruments, some at the continental level, some at the national level. Let's start with the continental level. There's the African Union's Malabo Convention, for example.
Oh, I've heard of that one. It's
That-
all about data protection.
You got it. And that's obviously very relevant to AI, since AI systems rely so heavily on data. It's interesting, the Malabo Convention actually came into force just last year in 2023 after years of waiting.
So even though it's not specifically about AI,
Mm.
it sets the stage for responsible data use, which is obviously a big deal for AI governance.
Absolutely. Then you have the Sharm el-Sheikh Declaration from 2019.
Okay.
They establish a working group on AI with the goal of coming up with a common African stance on AI. The idea was to get everyone on the same page, but, the problem is there's not a lot of public information available about what they're actually doing or what progress they've made.
So another one of those secret draft policies, huh?
Yeah.
Maybe we should start a detective agency to uncover them all.
Mhm.
Seriously, though, I think that lack of transparency can really make people nervous.
Yeah.
They start wondering what's going on behind closed doors.
Oh, for sure. Transparency is so crucial for building trust. But there are some initiatives that are much more transparent and promising. Take the African Commission Resolution 473, for instance. This one's particularly interesting because it specifically calls for an AI framework that respects human rights. They really emphasize human control over AI systems, which is a big concern for a lot of people.
Yeah, I can see why that would be a major selling point. Okay, so we've got the African Union working on these big picture frameworks. The report also mentions the Smart Africa Alliance. What role are they playing in all of this?
So the Smart Africa Alliance, their focus is really on using technology to drive Africa's development. And they're quite active on the AI front. They published their AI for Africa blueprint in 2021, and it's designed to give countries practical guidance on how to create their own AI policies.
Oh, that's interesting. So it's like a toolkit for governments, helping them figure out how to regulate AI in their specific context.
Exactly. They recognize that there's no one-size-fits-all approach. And one really cool concept they promote is the use of regulatory sandboxes.
Regulatory sandboxes. I'm not familiar with that term.
So imagine a controlled environment where companies can experiment with new AI technologies under the watchful eye of regulators. It lets them test out new ideas, figure out any potential risks, all before they release their products to the public. Mauritius actually has a regulatory sandbox that's specifically designed for AI adoption in the public sector.
Oh, that's interesting. It's like a safe space to try things out.
Yeah, it's a pretty innovative approach.
But what about actual laws on the ground? Are there any African countries that have laws specifically about AI right now?
Well, the report says no African country has actually passed a law specifically dedicated to AI yet.
Interesting.
But here's the thing. Over 30 countries in Africa already have data protection laws. And like we've been talking about, these data protection laws often have provisions that are super relevant to AI.
I'm still a little bit fuzzy on how data protection laws, which seem to be all about privacy, actually connect to AI governance. Can you give me an example?
Sure, let's say an insurance company wants to use an AI system to set car insurance premiums. This AI analyzes your driving habits, location data, maybe even social media posts to determine your risk level. And then based on that, they set your insurance premium.
Wow, they're using all of that. That seems like a lot of data.
It is. And that's where data protection laws come in. A lot of these laws include what's called the right against automated decision making. This basically means you have the right to know how an AI system made a decision about you. And you have the right to challenge that decision if you think it's unfair.
So in this case, if you felt like the AI was unfairly jacking up your insurance rates based on, I don't know, bad data or biased algorithms, you'd have legal options thanks to those data protection laws.
Exactly.
Okay, so even though they weren't specifically designed with AI in mind, these data protection laws are actually already shaping AI governance in Africa in a big way.
They are, yeah.
It's fascinating how these seemingly separate areas of law are so intertwined. So we've got these continental efforts, national strategies, and existing laws being applied to AI in new ways. But let's get a little more specific. The report zooms in on 3 countries in southern Africa, South Africa, Zambia, and Zimbabwe. What can you tell us about what's happening in those countries?
Well, it seems like South Africa is probably the furthest along when it comes to AI.
Okay.
They've actually got this draft AI national discussion document,
Okay.
and it lays out like all these key ethical things they're considering.
Like what kind of things?
Well, for example, they're thinking about how to make sure AI-powered robots are safe, how to prevent AI companies from being anti-competitive, like creating monopolies, and even how to deal with potential job losses caused by AI. That's a big concern for a lot of people.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. So it sounds like they're really thinking about the big picture, the societal impact of AI, which is good. A lot of countries kind of skip over that part.
Yeah.
But is South Africa just, talking about it? Or are they actually doing things?
Oh, no, they're taking action.
Okay.
For one, they set up this Artificial Intelligence Institute of South Africa, AIS, back in 2022.
Okay.
And it's like this R&D hub, research and development. And the goal is to make South Africa a global leader in AI.
Right. So they're putting their money where their mouth is in terms of investing in AI research and development.
Yeah.
But what about regulations? Like, are there actual rules in place right now specifically about how to use AI?
Not yet. Not in terms of like a dedicated AI law, but their data protection law, PUPIA, that's playing a pretty big role.
PUPIA. I feel like we've talked about that before.
Yeah, it's possible.
Isn't that their big data protection law that came into effect a few years ago? I think maybe we talked about it in one of our deep dives on like online privacy or something.
Yeah, you've got a good memory. And like we've been saying, these data protection laws often have parts that directly affect AI systems, even if they don't specifically call out AI.
Right. It's about how AI uses our data, not necessarily about AI itself.
Exactly. So with POPIA, a key part is that right against automated decision-making that we talked about earlier. Remember it with the car insurance example?
Yeah.
So that means a company can't just have a system making big decisions about someone, like legally binding decisions, without any human involvement.
So, like, if a bank wanted to use AI to approve or deny loan applications, they couldn't just let the algorithm make the final call.
Exactly.
They'd need to have a human in the loop somewhere, right?
Yep, to make sure things are fair and accurate.
Okay, so even without specific AI laws, POPI is already kind of setting some boundaries.
It is.
So it sounds like South Africa is making good progress. What about Zambia? What's happening there?
Zambia is interesting. They're really into digitization as a key part of their development plans, and they've been working on a national AI strategy for a while now. Actually, I think they just finalized it, and they're going to launch it officially on their Independence Day this year.
Oh, cool. Are there any details out yet about what's in it?
Well, unfortunately, the draft isn't public yet.
Ugh, another secret draft policy.
Hmm.
But it does sound like they're serious about AI. I mean, enough to bake it into their national development goals.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And like a lot of other African countries, they're relying on their data protection law to kind of, fill the gap for now. Zambia's Data Protection Act is pretty new. They just passed it in 2021.
Does it also have that provision about automated decision making?
You know it. That seems to be like the go-to thing for data protection laws across the continent. So even without specific AI laws, they're beating in some safeguards.
Right. So Zambia's on the right track, even if we have to wait and see what their full strategy looks like.
Yeah.
What about Zimbabwe? Where are they in all of this?
So Zimbabwe, they're also pretty keen on AI. They see the potential, particularly in sectors like agriculture and healthcare. The report actually highlights a couple of AI projects that they're supporting. One is about livestock security, and another is focusing on maternal health.
Oh, wow. That's really interesting.
It's cool to see them applying AI to some pretty important real-world problems.
Yeah. It shows they're not just talking about it. They're actually trying to use AI to make a difference.
Right. And on the regulatory side, it looks like they've drafted a national AI policy framework, but you guessed it, it's not public yet.
No way, another one.
Yeah.
Okay, at this point, I'm convinced there's like a secret vault in Africa filled with all these top secret AI documents. But until we can crack that vault, what are they using in the meantime?
Well, they're relying on their existing laws. They have their Cyber and Data Protection Act, and surprise, surprise, it has those provisions about automated decision-making.
So it seems like there's a pretty clear pattern here, not just in these three countries, but across the continent. It's like data protection laws are stepping up to fill the regulatory gap while countries work on creating more specific AI strategies and laws.
Yep, exactly. It's a practical approach, Use what you've got to address the immediate concerns while you work on crafting more comprehensive AI-specific solutions.
This has been a fascinating deep dive so far. We started off wondering if AI was even a thing in Africa, and now it's clear that it's already making waves and that countries are really trying to shape its future.
Yeah, it just goes to show how fast technology is moving, right?
Right.
And how governments are constantly trying to catch up and figure out how to regulate these new technologies. It's a challenge.
It also seems like Africa's taking this really thoughtful approach. It's not just about the tech itself. They're thinking about the impact on society, on human rights, on the future of the continent.
Absolutely. And that focus on ethical AI, well, it could actually put Africa in a really interesting position.
How so?
Well, it could actually make them a global leader in this whole area of ethical AI. But before we jump into that, let's take a step back and, recap what we've learned so far.
Yeah, good idea.
We've seen what's happened at the continental level, what individual countries are doing, and how those data protection laws are playing a crucial role. Now, the big question is, can Africa become a global leader when it comes to ethical AI?
So we've seen how African countries are approaching this whole AI governance thing, both across the continent and within individual countries. And we've even stumbled upon a few secret draft policies along the way. But now I really want to dig into this idea you mentioned. Could Africa actually become like a global leader in ethical AI? It seems kind of, I don't know, ambitious. I mean, a lot of people still think of AI as something that's mainly driven by the US and China.
It is a bold claim, no doubt. But I actually think it's totally within reach. Remember, Africa's starting from a pretty fresh perspective when it comes to AI regulation. They don't have decades of baggage to deal with, and that gives them this incredible chance to learn from the issues and mistakes that other parts of the world have faced and build ethical considerations right into their AI frameworks from the get-go.
So it's like they have this opportunity to kind of leapfrog ahead by making ethical AI a core part of their whole AI ecosystem.
Exactly. And if you think about it, one area where they're already ahead of the game is data protection. We've talked about how many African countries already have these strong data protection laws, and they're turning out to be super relevant to AI governance. If they keep strengthening these laws and making sure they're actually enforced, African countries can really show the world how serious they are about protecting individual rights in the age of AI.
Yeah, data privacy is a huge deal for everyone these days. And it's only going to get bigger as AI gets more and more sophisticated and starts collecting even more data about us.
Right. And it's not just about protecting that data. It's about making sure AI systems are actually fair and unbiased. And this is especially important in Africa, where, historical inequalities and social biases could easily get baked into AI systems if people aren't careful.
So are you saying we could actually see African countries leading the charge when it comes to building AI systems that are intentionally designed to combat those issues of fairness and bias?
I think it's definitely possible. There's this growing movement for Afrocentric AI, basically developing AI solutions that are tailored to the specific needs and context of African societies. And that can mean like weaving in traditional knowledge systems, cultural values, ethical principles, all that stuff right into the design and development of AI.
It's such a cool idea. Like, it challenges this whole idea that AI is this neutral thing that can just be applied anywhere without thinking about it. It's saying that for AI to really work and actually be helpful, it needs to be adjusted and tailored to fit each place.
Exactly. And this whole push for Afrocentric AI really fits in with the African Union's Agenda 2063. That's their big vision for the future of the continent, where science, technology, and innovation are at the heart of Africa's development. It's all about using AI to address the challenges that are specific to Africa and building a future that's more equitable and prosperous for everyone.
So it sounds like by embracing this idea of ethical AI and focusing on these Afrocentric solutions, African countries could not only become global leaders in this space, but also make sure that AI actually benefits their own people and helps them reach their development goals. It's a win-win.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And this is just the beginning, really. It'll be exciting to see how African countries continue to shape AI governance in the years to come and what kind of impact they have on the global stage.
Well, I have to say, after this deep dive, I am totally convinced that we should all be keeping a close eye on what's happening with AI in Africa. It's not just about the technology itself. It's about creating a future where AI is a force for good, both for the continent and for the rest of the world.
I agree. And on that note, I think it's time to wrap things up. This is an ongoing story, and we encourage you, our listeners, to stay engaged, keep learning, and see where this whole AI governance thing in Africa goes next. It's a fascinating journey.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us on the deep dive, everyone. We'll catch you next time.